Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this young lady back, independent journalist. You see her on Fox all the time. She's the amazing Sara Carter. Sara, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm doing great, Joe. Nice to see you too. It's good to be here. Good to be home.
If people could only see and hear what we talk about before we go on the air, I think that, you know what I mean? That'd be viral. We'd both be out of jobs. It'd be viral.
It would be viral. We would probably have to start our own special network. Yes, it would have to be outside separately of anyone and everything we know.
The Carter Pags network would have to launch because we would not be able to work where we work. No, it was nothing bad.
We could compete against Tucker.
Absolutely.
Compete against Tucker. There you go.
He'd be in big trouble.
Maybe not. But.
So, and again, it was nothing negative, but I think we're flowery with our language and we're very comfortable with each other. I'm so glad that you're back and you're safe. You were just up in North Carolina for a long time. And we're hearing so much mis and disinformation out of this administration specifically and the complicit news media about what's going on in North Carolina. The bottom line is this. FEMA has squandered a lot of money that it should not have over people coming across the border illegally. FEMA claiming that it was out of cash. We literally have in a gaggle on Air Force One, Mayorkas saying we don't have the funds. And now suddenly we have the funds. Sara, you were on the ground. I don't want to deal with the red tape and the bureaucracy from D.C. What did you see there? What did you find out from the people who went through this enormous storm, Helene?
First of all, I think I want to give my prayers. My heart is with them still in North Carolina after suffering such an enormous loss. Hurricane Helene, one family alone lost 11 family members in an area of the Appalachian Mountains. It was so unexpected, this storm, Joe. It was something that nobody would have ever imagined, they said, in their lifetime. And then people had said that they had been through flooding before. It was never like this. In fact, it was very minimal compared to what they faced under Hurricane Helene. So let me just put it to you this way. I get out there, I see no FEMA. There is nobody there from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. We saw no one there. We were looking. We were talking to residents, people that had lost all of their homes, people up in the mountain regions that had suffered such massive flooding, like Lake Lure especially, Chimney Rock. It went all the way to the top of that mountain. The flood reached, I think, the waves over 20 feet of flooding, and then came 40. Yeah, it actually shifted the river. So the geo landscape had shifted. So where the river once was, it then moved up towards the other edge of the mountain. It was that powerful. Homes were just decimated. Cars came down. I saw trucks buried halfway into the mud. There were people still in those vehicles, even when we were there, that had died. Yeah, that had to be removed from the vehicles after they had emergency services. And this was all due to neighbor helping neighbor. We saw nobody from the government there, especially during the first 12 days. I think at 12 days later, there was the first sign of FEMA. On the 11th day, I believe, is when Glenn Beck had gone out there and he was looking for people and he was walking around and he had found with Corey Mills, maybe I think from one video that I saw posted on X, he had found some FEMA reps, but they were way off in some cul-de-sac in some area where nobody knew where they were at and they had no flyers out. So none of the people in the neighborhood actually knew where to go or even knew that they were there. It was
Sara, I've got to stop you there. First of all, the website is saracarter.com. She does the Sara Carter Show on X, elsewhere. Her podcast is amazing on YouTube. Check out Sara Carter anywhere she's doing her business, and of course on Fox News all the time. I'm stopping you because I grew up in a place where hurricanes happen all the time in Florida, and you see them coming for a long time. It wasn't like FEMA didn't know what was going to happen. Now, you don't know exactly where it's going to be. I get that. And it can bobble and hobble and wobble and move as it's hitting the land. But you know that there's going to be a zone where people need emergency help.
Absolutely.
Now, if it takes a day, that's a long time. Did I hear you right? 10 or 11 days? No way.
Correct. No, absolutely correct. I was on the ground. I was talking to people. I said, and a FEMA representative contacted you? Has anybody met with you? No, I'm sorry. We've seen no one from the government. Have you seen any National Guard? No, I'm sorry. We haven't seen any National Guard. I was walking through 2 feet of mud. I had my mud boots on, and some areas were so saturated when we first got out there that we couldn't even move through the roadway because the water had rushed through. I talked to this one young couple, and it was just so heartbreaking. But they were inside their business. They had lost their business completely because they wouldn't have the money to rebuild everything. And they were shoveling the mud out. And they said that insurance, they contacted their insurance carrier. Their insurance carrier said, well, it looks like all the damage that you've suffered came from flooding. And since you didn't have flood insurance, we're probably not going to be able to help you. And they said, well, we're not in a flood zone. We didn't expect this. But it happened. And what happened was in Shenandoah, they had this entire neighborhood, as the water came down, it breached this neighborhood, and their mother lived in that neighborhood down the street from their business. She was in her home with her grandchild, as the water was sweeping in. Let me tell you something. I went to Butler, Pennsylvania on that day. I had to fly back to go to the president's rally. The day that I flew back to go to the president's rally, they found 3 bodies in that neighborhood. Oh. Thank God the grandmother and the child actually made it out safely, but their entire home was completely decimated, destroyed. I could see the pictures, family pictures in the mud, clothing. Now, let me put it even into starker terms, Joe. When a lot of the families called, remember, for the $750, supposedly, yes, quote unquote, we're going to give each family $750. That's not enough to go to the grocery store for many families 2 times, right? 2 times over. So if you think about it, you get to the grocery store, you're buying all new groceries for your household or for your family. It's about $300 sometimes when you walk out of the grocery store. Yes. So $750. There were people that got 0. They didn't qualify for 1 cent, even though they lost their entire home, or at that point did not qualify. There were people that were told, well, you got to get online and fill it out. And some people were using phones that were very limited in service. And they're like, we don't even have internet here. We don't have any service at all. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. My computer's in a house down the river. I don't even have a way to do this. I have no way of filling this out. They were using, some of the firefighters had emergency phones on them that they were able to use. So there were people that were still trapped in the mountains. There was another young couple that I met that said that when they contacted FEMA, and their apartment literally went down the river. So they were in Chimney Rock, their entire apartment. And she was 4 months pregnant, and her husband escaped before the apartment went down the river. So she said that when they asked for the money, FEMA basically just denied them. And then the next time, it was only $300 that they approved for another gal that I talked to named Tatum, after she lost her home and she was with 2 kids living with her father. So these are stories that are actual, they're factual. Right. The White House is lying. Well, they are. Disinformation comes from the White House. And
let me interject this, because Biden came out and he said, this is a few days ago, that Donald Trump needs to get a job. Get a life, man. And then he said that $750 is just the initial payment. That's just to help out with the immediate needs, and they've gotten a lot more on top of that. I'm glad that you went there, because I haven't talked to anybody, you're the first, who is actually there. So they had to apply for it, and FEMA had the right to turn them down? What?
Yeah, so FEMA did have the right to turn them down. And so one of the gals...
So people weren't handed a check for $750 like we've been told they were.
No, they were not. So, for example, the mayor of Newland, Texas, his daughter Tatum, I interviewed her, and now I don't know if things have changed because this was 3 or 4 days ago. But when I was talking to her, she was so frustrated. She was in tears. She had children. Obviously, her home, she was on the Tennessee border, and her home was destroyed. The whole bottom floor of her home was completely decimated. She had to go live with her father and mother in a small motel room with her kids and her husband. And when she contacted FEMA, she was the one that only got half. She got $300 of the $750.
Wow.
The couple that I told you about, whose apartment floated down the river, they said to the couple, they said, well, we're not here to cover your personal items. And he said, well, all I have is personal items. Wow. I work paycheck to paycheck. My fiance is 4 months pregnant. He worked and he lived in the bed and breakfast that was destroyed there in Chimney Rock. So there were so many stories like this, so many people that I talked to. But let me tell you the flip side of this. Americans are amazing. There were so many volunteers with Samaritan's Purse. There were people that came out of the woodwork from Texas, from other parts of the country who wanted to give of themselves and volunteer, and they were down there. And just the neighbors in the mountain, they call them the mountain people, right? You know, up in the Appalachians
Yes.
and in the mountains in North Carolina, working together to help heal one another. Because when the government wasn't there, they were there for one another. And I think that was the real story. The story was, it's like, look, if you're depending on the government to get you out of a bad situation, which by the way, we pay taxes, and those people, hardworking Americans, don't deserve their money to be from FEMA to be allocated 1.4 billion to, you know, illegal migrant crisis created by this administration purposefully. You know, though that money should be allocated to Americans for disaster relief. That's why we have FEMA. It shouldn't be allocated to foreigners. So when you're up there and you see this gut wrenching, I mean, imagine losing your home, your family, your business, your livelihood, and just sitting there, and I could just feel the weight of the world on their shoulders. I mean, there were moments where even right now thinking about it just brings tears to my eyes, because having to rebuild and start anew. And remember, some of the people that I talked to are older. They can't even imagine restarting all over again. You know, starting a new business. How do you do that when you have absolutely no cash? When your business is underwater, when your insurance company basically is saying, hey, well, sorry, you didn't have flood insurance in an area that is not known for flooding.
Right.
And so this is what they're left with. And then to have the government say, well, yeah, I'm sorry, the 750 is not going to cover your personal items or anything else.
At the same time, they're using
That's
it
like
as
getting kicked in the stomach, right?
It is.
I mean, it's like getting kicked in the stomach and you're like, well, wait a minute. What does this all mean then?
And while all this is going on, you've got Karine Jean-Pierre in the press room talking about how Trump is the one that spent the money on the migrants, which is BS. That's not true at all. It's fiscal year 23 and 24 combined is 1.14 billion. We know that. We know that they're still being housed in the fanciest hotels in New York. We know that they're still being sent to Springfield, Ohio to go take jobs that Americans should be doing and possibly eating the geese at the park. So you've got such a disconnect. I know that politics should not play a role at all in giving somebody disaster relief. But like it or not, Sarah, 3 weeks from now, there's an election. Are those people there afraid their franchise will not be able to be upheld? Can they vote in areas where entire cities are off the map now?
I think some of them are very concerned about that. I know that some of the voting, I asked that question. A lot of them had no idea, because obviously even by the time that I left, communications were still limited. People really didn't know if the ballot areas, you know, where they were originally going to be voting, if those buildings remained the same,
right,
or if they had switched them. I know for a fact, though, that there wasn't one person, Joe, that I talked to. There wasn't one person that didn't say to me, "Oh, November 5th, I'm at the ballot box.
Right.
I'm putting in my ballot. I'm voting." And you could guess the direction. Everybody that I talked to said they were voting for President Trump.
Right.
I think that, except for one, there was one lady. I showed you a picture.
I saw the
she
picture.
Was
it was a great
her Kamala
picture.
Harris shirt. So she was like, she was afraid. She didn't want to come up to me. She thought, oh, this person, this Sara Carter, she's not going to want to interview me. Not only did I interview her, but I gave her a big hug and we did a picture together.
Yes.
It's okay. You know, everybody was affected. It's about Americans. It doesn't matter what party you belong to. But the White House and the executive branch should have been there for these people, and they were not. And
the thing, you know what I said on my show, Sarah? You didn't hear it because you were out there working. But what I said on my show, and I wonder if you agree with me, you and I both know President Trump pretty well. He's a nice guy.
Yes, great guy.
Day one, he wanted to send money, send food, send trucks, get Elon Musk to send Starlink so people could communicate. What I said on my show that day, and I truly want your opinion on this, was that Trump would drop the politics and go to North Carolina with Kamala Harris to show a united front from those in leadership or government to help these people in need. Do you agree that he would have done that? I think he would have.
Oh, 100%. I think he would have done that.
I don't think she would do it.
No. I
Well,
don't
she
think
didn't go
so.
for 5 days.
No, she
Biden
wouldn't.
didn't go for 6 days.
She didn't go to the border, and she was the border czar. I mean, it
Yes.
took, you had to
Yeah.
pull her teeth to get her to go to the border. I mean, and because why? Because their whole policy was to leave that border wide open.
Yes.
And when you create a disaster such as the chaos that we saw at the border, money gets funneled from here to there to take care of a crisis that the United States wasn't expecting, nor the American people. And our tax dollars get funneled to deal with these man-made crises, this
Yes.
Biden-Harris crisis. And now that we have an actual crisis on our hands, you know, the American people are the ones left abandoned. There is nothing worse than being in a community and wanting to be able, I even told one of the couples, I said, I want to get a shovel. I want to start helping you shovel the mud out
Yeah.
because I felt like our government had abandoned them. Like, but the American people didn't abandon them. And that's
Right.
the important thing here. And I think, like, for me, that is a huge lesson in what's going to happen in November. And you say it's just around the corner. It is, Joe. It's just around the corner. And I think the American people are waking up. I think the American people do not understand what is happening in our country, or for that matter, the world. And they want somebody to make sense of everything. They want to put someone in office that has common sense and that's willing to fight for them.
Yeah.
And I believe that's President Trump. I believe there's no way around that. He is absolutely the person for this job. I believe that without President Trump, I would be terrified to think of what direction our nation would be taking.
And the
what
benefit
nation
for
we'd
those
be in.
for those watching and listening, the benefit is that he just did it for 4 years. We can directly now assess how he did compared to Biden-Harris. We can do that. We have that ability. It wasn't 100 years ago. It just happened. You don't have to pick up a history book. How was your life 4 years ago? SarahACarter.com is her website, SarahACarter.com. You see her on Sean's show on Fox all the time. She's got an amazing podcast. Her show is on X as well. Follow Sarah everywhere. I'm almost out of time, Sarah. Give me maybe 30 seconds on this. I think I know the answer. But are there some towns that might never come back, or that it might be years before they come back?
Oh, absolutely. It'll take years. It'll take years to rebuild those communities. Chimney Rock, Lake Lure, God only knows how long that'll take. Swannanoa as well, and many others, and especially up in the areas in the mountains, like where the family that lost 11 family members. I mean, this is going to be a long time to recover and recuperate. And I'm just praying for all the families in North Carolina. I know you are too, Joe,
Yeah.
and all the families in Florida and Tennessee, South Carolina and Georgia that lost their homes or that are having to start over again. It's terrible.
Well,
But
listen,
we're going to be there. We're going to be there for them.
And you have been since the beginning. I appreciate the update. And don't be a stranger. Come back on very soon. I appreciate you, Sarah. Thank you so much.
You too, Joe. You're the
All right.
best.
We're back after this. Stay right here.